Good afternoon and welcome to Lunch Break Live with Tea Party Patriots Action. I'm Bill Pasco, Tea Party Patriots man in Washington, and I will be flying solo this week. Jenny Beth Martin is in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention, so I'll be delivering both the Washington Report and the call to action. Let's get right to it. The House and Senate are in recess this week. The House will come back next Monday, the 22nd, while the Senate will not return until Tuesday, the 23rd. Last week in the House came back on Monday and voted to pass two bills under suspension of the rules. On Tuesday, the House took up and passed a rule governing floor consideration of 5 bills and resolutions. Then the House took up and passed H.R. 7637, the Refrigerator Freedom Act, by a vote of 212 to 192. Then the House took up and passed H.R. 7700, the Stop Unaffordable Dishwasher Standards Act. Yes, that was the SUDS Act, by a vote of 214 to 192. On Wednesday, the House took up and passed H.R. 8281, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, also known as the SAVE Act, by a vote of 221 to 198. With 5 Democrats crossing party lines to vote with the Republicans, and 198 Democrats voting against requiring states to obtain documentary proof of U.S. citizenship before registering someone to vote. Then the House moved to consider H.Res. 1344, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna's inherent contempt resolution against Attorney General Merrick Garland, which, if passed, would hold him in inherent contempt of Congress for refusing to honor a subpoena for the audio recording of Special Counsel Robert Hur's 5-hour interview of Joe Biden last October, and would fine Garland $10,000 per day until he honored the subpoena. First, the Democrats offered a motion to table the resolution, but that was defeated by a vote of 207 to 209. Then the Democrats offered a motion to refer the resolution to committee, but that too was defeated by a vote of 207 to 211. On Thursday, the House took up H.R. 8772, the Legislative Branch Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2025. After considering and rejecting 3 amendments, the House voted on final passage. The bill failed by a vote of 205 to 213. Because 10 Republicans voted against it and 8 did not vote. Then the House voted on Congresswoman Luna's inherent contempt resolution, and it failed by a vote of 204 to 210, because 4 Republicans voted against it and 12 did not vote at all. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Then the House took up H.J. Res. 165, a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval against the rules submitted by the Department of Education relating to non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. That passed by a vote of 210 to 205. Then the House tried to override President Biden's veto of H.J. Res. 109, a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval of the rule submitted by the Securities and Exchange Commission relating to Staff Accounting Bulletin number 121. But that failed by a vote of 228 to 184, and then they were done. Last week in the Senate came back to work on Monday and voted to confirm Nancy L. Maldonado to serve as a U.S. Circuit Judge for the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. On Tuesday, the Senate voted to invoke cloture on and then to confirm the nomination of Patricia L. Lee to be a member of the Defense Nuclear Facilities Safety Board. Then the Senate voted to invoke cloture on the nominations of Robin Michelle Meriwether to be a judge of the U.S. Court of Federal Claims and Charles J. Willoughby to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. On Wednesday, the Senate voted to confirm him to that position. Then the Senate voted to invoke cloture on and then to confirm the nomination of Anne Marie Wagner to be a member of the Federal Labor Relations Authority. Then it was back to Majority Leader Schumer's let's whack Republicans on abortion strategy as he brought to the floor a motion to invoke cloture on a motion to proceed to S. 4554, a bill to express support for protecting access to reproductive health care after the Dobbs v. Jackson decision on June 24, 2022, which was rejected. On Thursday, the Senate considered Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz's S.J. Res. 89, a joint resolution to direct the termination of the use of United States Armed Forces for the construction, maintenance, and operation of the Joint Logistics Over-the-Shore Pier on the coast of the Gaza Strip that has not been authorized by Congress. Democrats offered a point of order against the resolution that it was not entitled to expedited consideration, and the point of order was well taken by a vote of 48 to 46. Then the Senate voted to confirm Robin Michelle Meriwether to be a judge of the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, and then they were done. Now let's talk more about non-citizen voting. Last Wednesday, the House passed H.R. 8281, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, by a vote of 221 to 198. The bill requires states to obtain documentary proof of citizenship from someone before registering that individual to vote, and allows states to access certain federal databases so they can better clean their voter rolls and remove non-citizens. That's great. We got it through the House. But how can we get it through the Senate? After all, if we can't get it through the Senate, it doesn't do us much good. Oh, there will have been value in getting it passed through the House. We now know that 198 Democrats are so determined to make it possible for non-citizens to vote that they actually voted against the bill to make that impossible. But still, we want to get the bill enacted into law. How to do that? How can we get it through the Senate and onto Joe Biden's desk? And how can we get him to sign it? Well, former President Trump had an idea. Shortly after the bill had passed the House, he posted to his account on Truth Social a suggestion. Attach the bill to the continuing resolution that will pass both houses and be signed into law sometime in late September. After all, that's the last must-pass bill before the end of this Congress. So let's talk for a moment about that continuing resolution. What do we expect, and when do we expect it? We expect it in mid to late September, because the fiscal year ends on September 30, and the Congress must pass and the President must sign into law some form of spending bill that funds continuing government operations beginning on October 1 and extending for some period of time beyond that. House Republicans are determined to pass all 12 annual funding bills before they break for the August recess. That prospect took it on the chin last week when they failed to pass the legislative branch appropriations bill for FY 2025. They've already passed the appropriations bills for FY 2025 for Defense, Homeland Security, and State Department Foreign Operations. But that means they've got 8 appropriations bills left to pass. The Senate, on the other hand, isn't moving on its appropriations bills at all. The Senate is in no rush. But then the Senate doesn't have to be in any rush, because the Senate already has the upper hand in the upcoming negotiations over spending. Why, you ask? Because the Senate is controlled by the Democrats, and the Democrats also control the White House. Controlling the White House gives one chamber or the other the upper hand, because it means the dominant party gets 2 out of the 3 seats at the table. The House is trying to reduce that advantage for the Democrats by passing all its bills through the chamber so that when the negotiations begin, House leaders can at least say they've already passed their bills and they know what spending levels on each bill the House will tolerate. The House will return from its current break next Monday, July 22nd, and then we'll be in session for 4 days that week and 4 days the following week. And then we'll leave for the August recess on Thursday, August 1, and not return until Monday, September 9. So the House will have 8 legislative days to pass 8 government funding bills. That's a heavy schedule. They may or may not make it. But any way you look at it, when they come back in September, the House and Senate will have 3 4-day weeks to pass a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. No one anticipates a fight over whether or not the government will be funded. The fight may be over how long that continuing resolution lasts. Democrats, likely anticipating a loss of the White House, will want to keep the duration of the CR short, say until mid-December, so that President Biden will have a say on the full-year funding package that would be negotiated before the expiration of the CR. Republicans, on the other hand, expecting a return to the White House, will want that CR to last until early next year, say mid-March, so the new Congress and the new president, that is President Trump, can set the full-year funding levels for FY 2025. We won't know how this is going to turn out until the middle of September. Stay tuned. Now to the latest on anti-Trump lawfare. Breaking news, earlier this morning, Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida dismissed Special Counsel Jack Smith's federal criminal case against former President Trump, charging Trump with mishandling classified documents. In a 93-page ruling, Judge Cannon declared that Smith's appointment violated the Appointments Clause of the Constitution, found in Article 2, Section 2. Quote, the special counsel's position effectively usurps legislative authority, transferring it to a head of department, and in the process threatening the structured liberty inherent in the separation of powers, she wrote. The Department of Justice likely will appeal her decision. Now to the 2024 campaign update. It's still an open question as to whether or not Joe Biden will be the Democrats' nominee for president. As I sat down to write this Washington report on Saturday afternoon, I was anticipating spending time walking you in minute detail through all the ups and downs of the week's events regarding Biden's continued candidacy. But then Saturday evening's Trump rally happened and the world changed, so let me summarize it for you quickly. At the start of the week, as Congress returned from its short recess, a recess that had helped Biden enormously because it meant that Congress was not in town to make it easy for members to talk to one another about Biden's debate debacle in the immediate aftermath of that calamity, Biden was strong. He was adamant that he was the nominee, and he was going to remain the nominee, and nothing and no one would change that. And on Monday and Tuesday, it looked as if he had succeeded in reestablishing himself firmly as the nominee, quelling any possible revolt against him. But on Wednesday morning, former Democrat Speaker Nancy Pelosi went on MSNBC's Morning Joe, a TV show she knows Biden watches, and said the decision was up to him, and she had faith he would make the right decision for the country. She deliberately chose language to suggest that Biden was still in the process of making a decision, even though he had indicated otherwise earlier in the week. I never thought of Nancy Pelosi as an avid student of history, but in handling Biden this way, she was mimicking the actions taken by President John Kennedy, who, while struggling to solve the Cuban Missile Crisis, settled on a strategy of ignoring the most recent message from Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev and acting instead on an offer contained in an earlier message. Then Thursday night's post-NATO press conference happened. For almost an hour, Biden entertained questions from the press corps. To his credit, he took questions from several journalists, and unlike the way he handled 2 radio interviews the previous week, he did not know the questions in advance. On the other hand, he did call on questioners who had been pre-selected by his communications staff. Biden did not throw up on himself. He opened the press conference with a gaffe, referring to Kamala Harris as, quote, Vice President Trump. He did not have any stop and start or blank stare moments. On the other hand, he wasn't spectacular. He did nothing to advance his cause. By week's end, 18 sitting members of Congress and 24 former members of Congress and multiple Democrat governors had called on Biden to step down as the Democrat nominee for president. And we were all waiting for the next round of polls, which we expected to be released on Sunday, to help determine his fate. And that's where we were on Saturday when we tuned in to Fox News to watch the Trump rally from Butler, Pennsylvania. Now to the shooting. On Saturday evening in Butler, Pennsylvania, former President Trump was the target of what appears to have been an unsuccessful assassination attempt. I say it appears to have been because we're not yet sure of the shooter's motivation. While it's clear the target was former President Trump, it may not have been because the shooter had a political intent. He may have been insane and simply wanted to impress a Hollywood actress, as was the case the last time an American president was shot. So let's wait and see on that. 3 bystanders were shot in the attack. One of them, a 50-year-old retired fire chief named Corey Comparator, was killed on the scene when he threw himself on top of his wife and daughter. 2 others were left in critical condition. Former President Trump was grazed by a bullet that struck his right ear. He was led off the stage by Secret Service agents who surrounded him in a protective cordon. As he left the stage to let his supporters know he was okay, he pumped his right fist and urged them to fight, fight, fight. Within seconds of the shooting, Secret Service counter-snipers had located the shooter and taken him down with a shot to the head. The shooter fired from the roof of a building located within 150 yards of the rally stage. There's a video clip circulating on the internet that appears to show the gunman on top of the roof of the structure, and bystanders see him and are trying to call out to authorities that there's a man on the roof with a gun. The Associated Press reported on Sunday that a local police officer climbed to the roof and began to encounter the gunman. But the gunman pointed his weapon at the police officer, and the officer relinquished his hold on the roof and dropped to the ground. The shooter began firing at the rally stage just seconds later. And seconds after that, the Secret Service counter-sniper took him out. Susan Crabtree is reporting that her sources in the Secret Service are telling her one of the problems at the Butler rally may be a resource allocation decision. First Lady Jill Biden's detail needed more, and resources were directed away from the Butler rally to accommodate that. At this point, the first and most important question is going to be, how did a lone shooter access that building's roof? It had a direct line of sight to the stage and was an elevated platform no more than 150 yards away. Speaker Johnson said on a Sunday talk show yesterday that the House would immediately hold oversight hearings. Oversight Committee Chairman Comer said he wanted to hold a hearing on the first day the House is back, next Monday, the 22nd, and he expected Secret Service Director Kimberly A. Cheadle to be there. House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mark Green said he spoke with Secretary Mayorkas yesterday and expects further discussions. Others are talking about setting up a new committee or commission to get to the bottom of what happened. Stay tuned to this developing story. That's our Washington report for this week. Now for our calls to action. First, Democrats are trying to impeach Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. As you may know, Democrat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez introduced articles of impeachment against Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito on July 10. The articles do not level any exact crimes against the justices, but instead mention already debunked claims. It's imperative that you know how to rebut the lies being told about these two justices and defend them against these baseless attacks. The real reason for the incessant attacks against these justices and the court as a whole is to cause a crisis of confidence in the American people about the Supreme Court that runs so deep that the citizenry accepts the left's solution of court packing. The reason they want to pack the court is, of course, to control the court, to control the country for generations. Arm yourself with our toolkit so that you're equipped and ready to fight the lies, and make sure our Supreme Court remains independent. Second, now the Senate must pass the SAVE Act. The House of Representatives passed the SAVE Act on July 10, and it now goes to the Senate. The SAVE Act closes the loopholes in America's voter registration system that currently allow illegal immigrants to register to vote. The SAVE Act requires proof of citizenship before registration. This is an essential fix that is needed in order to secure our elections this year and in the future. It's incredibly important that we contact both Republicans and Democrats as well. So use our online portal to quickly send a pre-written email to both of your senators asking them to co-sponsor the bill and vote for it. When you're done, we'll provide the phone number for you to call them as well. As always, if you ever have a question or a comment, you can email us at jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. That's jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. And if you want me to answer a question on air, just add "for broadcast" to the subject line. Thanks for tuning in this week. Until next week, be well and be active.